Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes Weekly Webisodes. I'm Sara Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. Today, we're playing with a really unique collection from our friends at Stamperia called Songs of the Sea. And today's collection includes two 8x8 paper packs plus two die-cut chipboard packs. So let's take a closer look, and we can start with our papers. I'm going to move aside the chipboard. We'll take a closer look at that later, but we can begin maybe with our Songs of the Sea paper pack. Now, this one has some beautiful designs with seafaring themes. You've got mermaids, you've got old ships, you've got lots of nautical imagery, seashells, and all kinds of beautiful, beautiful designs. Now you're going to have all over papers like you can see here. You'll also have some designs that are cutouts. So you can see on this one, you've got a really nicely illustrated set of cutouts here. On the other side, you've also got the option with a little bit less design on there so that you can personalize those. So it just depends on which side of that sheet you're working with. So you've got some tags and other elements on the inside back and also the inside front of this collection. You also have some more detailed designs that you can cut out. So this is the Songs of the Sea paper pack. Then there's also the Songs of the Sea background paper pack. And there are some really beautiful papers in here. You've got designs with netting, with script, some like fish scales. I really like this. You've got kind of a steampunk twist on this theme. So you have some faux rusting, really, really beautiful. This one is probably one of my favorite Stamperia collections. And the background designs mean that you can simply use them on the front of your card, inside of your card. You can layer them up as you wish. Now, of course, these two paper packs can be used individually, but as you might guess, they work beautifully together too. So those are the two paper packs. Now back to those die-cut chipboard sets that I whisked away. Well, I put them out onto 8.5 by 11 white cardstock so that you can see a little bit better. Now there are two packs. The first one is called Creatures. So this is where our mermaids are going to be. We've got some seahorses in here, shells and bubbles and all kinds of fun stuff. This one has 55 elements, so you can see them all here. I really like how they include a variety of different sizes. So you've got some larger elements that would work beautifully as a card focal, and then you also have some smaller accent pieces there too. Then the second one is called Ship and Treasures, and you can see them here. There are 42 elements in this set, and of course you've got your compass, spyglass, your ship, and you've got some treasure in there too. And again, everything is designed to perfectly coordinate with the other pack and with those papers too. Now today's webisode is so beautiful and it is really just so unique. I can't wait to share some ideas and some techniques with you. I'm really glad you're here today, so come play with us. Let's start off with a card that combines the pattern papers and chipboard accents as a layered focal. I love how easy it is to create a design with these elements because you know everything is designed to mix and match together and coordinate so easily. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of choosing elements and putting things together. So I've started here first by covering my card front with this script paper. Now this paper comes from the background selection and it's actually this inside front piece. Now before I open this all the way up, I do want to give you a little tip from a paper wisher who wrote to me and said she often uses some of the portion of the front cover of these paper packs as well. And so nothing goes to waste. So even if you look at the Songs of the Sea pack, you've got some elements here on the front that you can choose which side you want to use, but you may be able to use portions of both. So I love it. Nothing goes to waste, which is great. But the sheet that I'm using here on the inside, just take a look at how beautiful that is. I think this is really just so gorgeous. And I couldn't resist combining it with this sheet that I absolutely love. I think it's like the side of an old shipwrecked piece of metal. You've got some gorgeous steampunk borders going on here, and everything, it just has this fabulous patina rusty effect. And so I'm using the two of these together. And you can see that there's some edging already on this paper, and it's on the other sides as well. I wanted to really emphasize that, and so with my card, let me pull this out here, you can see I've really inked heavily around the outside edges, not only of the card itself, but also of this piece of shipwreck paper that I've cut down slightly smaller than the front of the card and then placed that right on top. And I'm doing this with the charcoal black ink. This is the Prism ink pad from Hunky Dory. It's a dye-based ink, and that's going to give me this really heavily defined shadow effect here. So let me show you this. I'll move aside my card and my papers here for a second, and I'm going to bring in some other papers here. We can take a look. So when you're inking, what I like about the Prism ink pads is that they've got a really nice raised ink pad. So if I tilt this, you can see the spongy part. That's the ink. That's where all the inky wonderfulness is. And it's raised up off of this plastic base, which makes it a lot easier to hold it up against your paper and either just simply slide along the edge back and forth, and you can see up against that white that there is a nice contrast there. Now, if I want something heavier, all I need to do is angle my ink pad and just repeat the process. So I'm just kind of shuffling this back and forth. I'm not stopping and starting. That tends to disrupt the line. So if I stop and then I kind of get it smushed on there. So I like to just keep that movement going back and forth and then keep going as long as I want to. So you can see how I've got a nice thick edge on there. You can, of course, shuffle it even more. Really just depends how inky you want that to get. So you can get some really thick, heavy coverage on there. Now I wanted to show it to you on this brown paper, but let's also take a look what it looks like on the blue. Again, if you just want a crisp line like so, you can see this up against the white, or you can also give it some more extra inky wonderfulness like so. Now you'll notice I've got a little smudge here. The important thing to note about these beautiful juicy ink pads is that the ink does require a little bit of time to dry. So what I like to do actually is pop my paper on top of the ink pad, and then it's not on any of my other papers that I might not want to get inky. So you may need to prop that up. You can also give it a little zip zap with your heat tool and speed up that drying time if you want to. But propping it up onto some other things on your work surface may be a good option for you until that ink dries thoroughly. So again, I've got my shipwreck paper just nested in here, and then the rest of the design is adding in some of the chipboard pieces from the Ship and Treasures set. These are popped up on foam tape, so there's a bit of dimension. Now I've overlapped them to create a flow across the card front, and this helps to lead your eye to each of the elements. So everything is slightly overlapping here. Now another design tip to keep in mind is to vary the sizes of the chipboard pieces you choose and vary the shapes. Now, as we saw with the sampler, you've got lots of different sizes and shapes of chipboard pieces in this collection, so that makes it a lot easier. So I've got my small, my medium, and my large piece all layered up here. And what's also fun is that although they're different in shape, they all contain circular images on here too. So some nice continuity in there as well. So the sentiment here is one of the cutouts from the Songs of the Sea paper pack. And again, this is from the inside front cover. So you've got lots of these different elements in here. They're actually not too tricky to fussy cut. So even if you're fussy cut averse like I am, it's really not too much of a hassle there. So I've trimmed this out and popped that up on foam tape as well. And again, this is also sort of overlapping in here too. And then for the inside of the card, I have some more pattern paper. Now this is that same beautiful rusty ship design plus the chipboard piece here. So you can see how everything just comes together so easily. Now I've got another card that I want to show you, and with this card I'm simply combining the papers and chipboard, and again I've got some really heavy black inking around here. I've covered the front of the card with this netting paper, which has this portion of the border on here. Let me show you this. This is another just absolutely gorgeous one. And I've added on here a border. This is a torn strip. I've got a little snippet of it left of this beautiful blue script paper. And tearing works really nicely with the designs in this collection because, of course, it's got that aged effect. So simply tearing, if I'm tearing it toward me, you can see I'm getting that white edge. If I'm going to tear it away from me, I will have the non-white edge. So regardless of which way you're tearing, in this case, I've inked that torn edge also with the charcoal ink and then let it dry very thoroughly before gluing it down here on the front of the card. And then I've also got some other elements here, these chipboard pieces. This is another one of the cutouts, and that's nested in this chipboard frame. Again, I've got the elements overlapping. I have a little bit of jute twine wrapped around the front, and that goes underneath this frame here. Everything is inked around the outside edges. And then for the inside, so let's talk about inking a little bit more. I've got two pieces of paper in here. This one is, as you can see, inked along this torn edge and around all the outside edges. I glued that down. I was really happy with it. And then I closed the card, and when I opened it up again, I had some of this not quite dry ink that had transferred to this side. So this piece here is serving double duty. It's covering up the jute twine that I've got wrapped around the front, but it's also covering up some stray ink that managed to get on the inside front here. But I think it works out pretty nicely. It gave me another option to use some of this really gorgeous pattern paper and then also another chipboard piece in here too. So it all worked out in the end, but just a little tip from me, especially if you love doing that heavy inking technique, do let it dry thoroughly before you close your card, and also you might want to give your hands a bit of a wash too before you start handling papers and other elements on your table. So just another tip from one paper crafter to another. Learn from my experience. This card includes a technique that's an oldie but a goodie, especially when working with papers that have an aged and distressed style. You can see here on my cutout piece underneath my chipboard elements that this has been crumpled and worn a bit. Now this is easy to do, so I'm going to show you with my cutout piece here. We can take a look. So this is one of many of the cutout elements that you have in the paper pack, and I've just snipped this out from the backing piece. Now it's nice and smooth and flat now, but I want it to look a little bit more aged. I've got a water mister on hand, so what I'm going to do is flip this over and give it a bit of a mist on both sides. And this is not soaking wet, but it's pretty wet. It's wet enough so that when I'm crumpling the paper here, that I'm really creating some folds and bends in the paper itself. Now you can do as much crumpling as you want to, or you can just do a little bit. You can focus around the edges, and then when it is dry, you can add it to your card. What I like to do is kind of leave it a little bit dimensional. I don't want to smooth it out completely. If you want to ink around the edges, this is a good time to do it after it's dry. I would really recommend, unless you want a very distressed look, to do your inking after you do your water misting, because if you mist this dye-based ink, it will create some very dark areas around the outside and probably all around the front of your piece too. So you want to keep that in mind. And then when this is all ready to go, you can add it to the front of your card. I've popped it up on foam tape here so that I still have some dimension and some texture on here. It just really adds a nice bit of interest on the front. So then I've got my steampunk fish, and I've got my starfish, and I've got a shell, all chipboard die cuts kind of overlapping on here. And I really like this effect. Then the background is this really beautiful distressed paper. Look how gorgeous this is. Let's just take a minute to look at this design. This is one of my favorites, and I just love how Stamperia designers like Antonis create so much detail on each sheet. You can really appreciate the thought that he's put into his designs. So again, some steampunk rusting over here on this border, and then you've got this nice open area here, again a portion of a border up around the top and the sides. So you can use whatever portion of this design suits your card project, or indeed any of your paper crafting projects. So I've used this edge on here, and then I've managed to capture a little bit of this piece up here in the corner too. So that's covering the front of my card. And then I'm also using this cool vintage map paper, just this portion here. So I've cut this down, and this is just going right in the center of my card, right across from top to bottom there. The edges here have been inked, of course, and then allowed to dry before being glued down onto the front. And then I've also got a strip here of this kind of faux wood paper, and I have a script dazzle going across there. Now I rolled the end of this, again, just for a little bit of interest, and this whole piece is up on foam tape, and then I've got a shell chipboard piece overlapping. For the card inside, I have another piece of this pattern paper along with a tag cutout. Now this has another strip of that faux wood paper as the topper and a chipboard die cut. So what I've done here, this is one of the cutouts from the paper pack, and then I've just cut this from one of the faux wood papers and simply looped it around, and then kind of figured out how long I wanted this top tab to be. And then you can add a topper. So it could be, whoops, it could be a starfish that looks like this. You could also have a shell, that would be pretty too. Or you could have one of these circular elements. So lots of different elements that you can mix and match with that. And then again, just pop this down on the inside of your card. And I have a With Love dazzle on here. Now, originally the With Love is all one long piece, but I snipped the two words apart so that I could fit it in to match my design. Okay, I have one more card project to show you. I'm going to grab my chicken wire die and ink pad, and we'll take a look. I love how some of the papers in this collection have a fishnet design, and I thought about the chicken wire die from Hot Off the Press and how that could be used to mimic that pattern, which is what I've done here with these little snippets that are kind of tucked behind my card focal on my card front. So let's take a look at this die, and we can see how it's supposed to look and how it can be altered. So you've got two pieces here. You've got this all over design, and then you've got the rectangle frame shape. And if I flip this over, you can see a project idea of one way that you can use this. Now, when you die cut your piece, and I die cut mine from some of that brown patterned paper, you'll have a piece that looks like this. Let me put it up on some white paper so you can see. Now I've got some variation of the brown and some texturing on here from the various colors of that brown pattern paper. But I wanted to add a little bit more color on here. So of course, I'm using my charcoal ink pad for this. I also wanted this to have the look of torn fish netting. So rather than using this piece as perfectly cut as it is, I decided to use just little scraps of that. So you can either grab your scissors and cut this apart. You can also, because it is quite delicate, you can also just tear it. Kind of walk your fingers around there and pull it apart like so. And then you'll have a really kind of organic effect here. And then once you have that torn, you can simply take your ink pad and add a little bit of dimension to some portions of it or all of it if you want to, like so. And oops, I'm going to be careful with this. There you can see you've got a vintage faux distressed beautiful piece of fish netting on here. And so what I've done is I tore a couple of different strips, inked them, and then tilted them at an angle and kind of tucked them behind this focal cutout that I've got going on the front of the card. And then this is overlapped with a mermaid chipboard piece from the Creature set, and then a couple of shells as well. The background paper that I'm using here is this design, and you've got so much going on here with the variety of patterns from the sheet music to the swirls, this kind of Baroque design, all layered on top of a faux wood paper. And of course you've got your border built in here too. So I didn't feel like I needed to add a whole lot more to the paper itself. So I just glued it down on the front of my card and then inked around the outside edges and then added my elements on top. So not a whole lot more was needed on there, I felt. Then for the inside of my card, I have the rest of that same pattern paper. I tore along the edge here, inked it, and glued it down. Now then I've also got this seahorse die cut and layered. So the seahorse is, it used to be right here on my cutout sheet. Now you can cut this with scissors if you want to. You can also cheat like I did, and you can use hot off the presses 12 circle and scalloped cutting dies. There's one that fits really nicely. I just popped that down, ran it through my die cutting machine, and then of course you also have a scallop that will fit just right around the outside edge there, and that's what I've used here. So I've got the two of them layered up together, and then I've also got a fussy cut sentiment overlapping this here and added that as the finishing touch. And this is our final card project of the day today. So a big thank you to our friends at Stamperia for these gorgeous papers and embellishments. And a big thank you to you for being with us today. We're really glad you're here, and we're so happy you're part of the Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, see this webisode on paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page, and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.